Good evening, beautiful people. I got this beautiful glass from the Fat Laugh Feast Network, aka FLFnetwork.com. You can find them by going to crosspolitic.com. That's my source for all my information about religion and politics. It's done from a balanced perspective. They interview people from all different walks of life. They talk to authors. They talk to people that are producing nature documentaries that are made from a Christian perspective. They speak to politicians. One of them actually is a politician now. And I hope he gets to represent his local area and give glory and honor to God while he's doing it. They interview Mormons, they interview people from all different backgrounds, even Native Americans. They interview people that believe all religions are the same, and some people who believe in no religion. Some people who believe that America was founded as a Christian nation, which is true, and other people who believe that that wasn't the case. Of course, there's more conclusive evidence that points to the contrary conclusion. On Monday, I was privileged to meet a kind lady named Janice and her friend Catherine. She noticed I was reading Henry David Thoreau, his work on living near Walden Pond, and she asked me if it was a good book. I didn't really know what to tell her because there are parts of it that I enjoyed and parts of it that I thought were questionable, so I didn't really want to give a plug for it because I didn't want to encourage people to listen to something that's inappropriate or read something that's inappropriate. But it's hard to know how to respond because there were elements in the book that reflect my faith and others that oppose it. It doesn't always easy to know how to respond to different attitudes presented in books. I believe as Christians we should mostly read Christian material. Janice blessed me with a free copy of Richard Wurmbrand's Tortured for Christ. I'd read this book years ago, but it's important that I refresh my memory with what's inside the covers. I do recall that Richard was in prison. He was a pastor in Poland who believed in God, and he refused to deny his faith in order to avoid imprisonment. When he was in prison, he had to listen to a voice telling him over and over Christianity is stupid. even though they tried to change his mind, he refused to give in to the lies of the enemy. His biography is published by Voice of the Martyrs. They help the persecuted church all around the world. One Iranian Christian was shown favor by God with the authorities in his country, even though the authorities could clearly tell that he was a Christian because of his literary material. God showed favor and he was able to carry on and keep on moving. The guy who was checking what he was carrying, his luggage, he was impressed by him. He noticed there was something different about him, that he wasn't just professing to be a Christian, but he was actually living a Christian life. It's interesting how some people in the world can tell we're Christians sometimes because of the warmth of our spirits and sometimes because of the way we express God's kindness, and sometimes in obvious ways when we talk about Christ. If we're talking about him in a way that suggests that he is our all and everything, people can't help but notice the authenticity of our Christianity. People are drawn into a relationship with Christ by our love for God, our love for our friends and family, and our love for our enemies, or those who falsely see themselves as our enemies. Nobody is meant to be our enemy, but some people falsely perceive themselves as our enemies. Maybe because they've had bad experiences with Christians or the church. It's sad that people turn their backs on God just because he wasn't represented in the correct way to them. It's important for us always to represent God well instead of representing him poorly. This week I've been studying Deuteronomy. I knew that Jesus was quoting scripture when he said that man doesn't live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. But previously I didn't know where that came from, and it comes from Deuteronomy. When Paul talks about not circumcising the flesh, but circumcising the heart, that also comes from Deuteronomy. It's an interesting concept to consider that our hearts need to be changed. Our internal transformation matters more than our external transformation. God doesn't want us to be whitewashed tombs full of dead men's bones. He wants us to be fully surrendered to him. He wants us to have an authentic relationship with him. He doesn't want us to fake it with him. He He wants us to approach His throne with reverence, in recognition of His holiness. We don't have to be afraid to hold back with Him. We can be ourselves with Him. We can tell Him whatever's on our minds. He's not going to reject us as long as we're breathing. While we're inhaling and exhaling, there always remains the opportunity to get our lives right with Christ. None of us knows how long we've got until our time on this planet is finished. We should live every moment as if it's going to be our last. We should be careful in everything that comes out of our mouths and everything we think to make certain that it reflects the glory of God. There are things that I can't control, but I do have a certain element of control over my thought life, over what I allow myself to meditate on. I want the meditation of my heart to always bring glory to God. I never want it to bring Him shame. I always want to be in a place where I'm in right standing with Him. He told us to be perfect as He is perfect, and to help us in the process of perfection, He told us to pray without ceasing. Praying can be as simple as saying, "Help me, God." Some people pray in the wrong direction. They pray to statues. They pray to devils that have no ability to help them, but in God's grace, He chooses to answer prayers for healing and prayers for financial prosperity, despite credit that's given to demons instead of being given to Him. Obviously, it's best if we give credit where it's due, because it's only when our thoughts are concentrated on God and our actions reflect His character that our future is safeguarded, and we have the guarantee when we die that we'll go to a place of everlasting peace and everlasting joy. This week, yesterday, I climbed Mount Biabaram with my car. There was a point on the way back when both of us were bewildered, but as soon as I saw people coming in the opposite direction heading towards us, I knew that we were on the right track. I had given up hope and I was fearful, and I was angry, thinking, what have you gone and done to myself? And I wondered if I was going to be wandering around in the forest until the day I die. But God got me through. He was the only one that could get us through. We didn't have a GPS, well, we have a GPS, but the GPS couldn't help us because all it told us was that we were on a certain track. It didn't tell us how to get back to the car park. There are times in life when all you can rely on is your faith, where all you have is God. When you're at your wit's end, it's during those times that you realize how much we need God in our lives, how much we need to be in the right relationship with Him. In the middle of despair, it's easy to give up hope. It's easy to think that there's no way I can ever get out of this. It's easy to shake our fist at heaven and say, God, why did you allow me to get into this situation? But the truth is that God gives us free will. He doesn't force us to go into situations where we risk our lives. When there's no higher purpose behind it. Now you could argue that the higher purpose was to minister to my friend or for him to minister to me, to remind me that my relationship with God is paramount above all other relationships. I know that every situation in life can be used as an opportunity for God to display His glory. Often in the middle of dire straits, it's hard for us to see how God is present. It's difficult for us to see how God can use our situation for the sake of His glory. Often we have to get away from all our creature comforts. God has to allow our access to movies or swimming or going anywhere we want in a car or flying overseas or flying interstate or having lunches in cafes where you're sitting down and eating, or having parties with more than 20 people, which is easy to do if you have a family gathering. If you have a family reunion, it's very easy to clock up more than 20 people. It's very easy to clock up hundreds and thousands of people when you have a church setting. It's hard to get used to a world where you have limitations on numbers in gatherings. Soon our gatherings will be permitted to be 10 again, then we'll go back to 20. There's a limitation on gatherings of 10 in Delaware right now. God's going to change this world back to the way that it was before. If you need healing right now, He can give you a miracle. If you've got doubt in your heart, He can replace it with faith. If you've got hate in your heart, He can replace it with His love. If you feel helpless, He can instill His hope in you. You never have to feel like you're walking on your own. God is always with you on this journey of life. He never leaves us or forsakes us. He's always faithful. He's always looking after His children. It isn't always easy to cope with what life throws at us. God said in His word that He wouldn't give us more than we can handle. It's at those times when we feel like life is more than we can handle that He expands our capacity to handle what life is throwing at us. He gives us an extra measure of strength. He enables us to be overcomers in Christ by the blood of His Lamb-like self and the word of our testimony. He is both a lamb and a lion. He is ever reliable, ever trustworthy. I didn't think I would be able to stay awake all day yesterday until midnight, but He enabled me to do that. something I wanted to do for ages, but I haven't been able to do it. He increases my stamina. He gave my carer a dream about me. My carer dreamed that he was like Peter and I was a soul that God was using him to fish out of the water, I guess to take out of a place of despair and to fill with hope. I'm still on a journey of growth. I praise God because I've managed to stay sexually pure for 2 weeks. Even though I've watched things I shouldn't have watched and I've listened to things I shouldn't have listened to, and I've promoted things I shouldn't have promoted, God's with me, He's helping me. I learned a lesson today that I've got to be careful in what I share on the internet. One lady came to me and told me to take down my picture of her daughters. I didn't know she had a picture of her daughters. I thought that it was her because I wasn't that familiar with what her face looks like. I wish she'd seen the post before she judged me. I was talking about how God's made all of us beautiful. It definitely wasn't meant as a sexual post. It was just meant to celebrate the incredible handiwork of our fantastic designer. Maybe I could have handled the situation differently, but I chose to block her because I just didn't want to deal with any drama. I've got too much of it in my life as it is already. I've got too many things to deal with without having to worry about somebody that I don't even know. Maybe they've got connections that can help me. Maybe I'll miss out on opportunities by not being connected to this lady, but that's okay. God's got other opportunities for me. It's just a shame when I get a new friend and then that person is out of my life as soon as they've come into it, mainly because of me, but also because some people are quick to jump to the wrong conclusion. Some people aren't having physical church meetings even though they're legally allowed to. They're not having the kind of meetings where the pastor is preaching and the congregation is in the same room watching his preaching. And that's okay. It's okay if you don't have the kind of preaching where the preacher and the congregation are in the same room together, and if you do have that kind of church experience, people shouldn't hate on each other because they have a different way of viewing the world. I believe that the situation where you have a pastor and a congregation in the same room is the ideal. It's the best way to do church. I miss having church like that. It's only a matter of time before things go back to normal. I miss praising and worshipping. I miss talking with people after church, even if they get confused by my approach to relationships, even though I don't always handle relationships well, even though I don't always know how to respond to questions, and I don't always know how to ask the right questions. I still love having the opportunity to hear people's stories face to face. There's nothing like it, and there's nothing like being in a room full of people that are head over heels in love with Jesus. It's really an amazing experience. There's nothing like it in this world. I was able to worship God on the top of the mountain. That was pretty amazing. The only thing that could have made it better would have been if there had been some people with instruments there. God uses our lives as His instruments of worship. He uses us to bring peace and joy to this world. He's with us in the middle of our tribulations. He's enabling us to overcome them. He helps us to stay focused on Him. He helps us to be hopeful and positive in a world full of negativity. I had a dream that my friend came to me when I was considering watching the daily stories of this female rapper and getting involved in a relationship with her. On previous occasions when I've considered getting involved in a relationship with someone, she's popped up in my dreams, and even though she didn't say anything, I almost take it as a warning not to get involved in a relationship, as if God is speaking to me through her in my dreams. I had a dream that some people were chasing me, and I hopped in a canoe, and some Native Americans were watching and smiling and waving. I'm pretty sure I've been thinking about Native Americans and Native Canadians because Henry David Thoreau talks about Native Americans in his book. It's interesting taking journeys with people when you read about their lives. It's fascinating to see how people live at different times in history, to see the progress that we've made, to see how the world is the same and what's altered. There's so many modern inventions that we have that we take for granted. This world is so much closer than it used to be. This guy Henry would have loved the social distancing laws because he didn't like spending time with people. He liked to keep his distance from them even when he was in a room full of people. There was a time in history when the majority of the Earth's population would have referred to that kind of behavior as being an oddball, but now it's something that governments are mandating for people, and it's a way of life that's being shoved down our throats. There's good and bad things about being alone and being all by yourself. When you're all by yourself, people can't tell you what to do. They can't criticize you. They can't tell you how to do what you're doing in a way that's different to how you're doing it. But they also can't comfort you. They can't listen to you when you want to share your heart. They can't hug you. They can't share a meal with you. Henry didn't mind occasionally sharing a meal with people. They say he struggled in his relationships with the opposite sex. And often when he was expressing affection for the same sex, it was like a subliminal representation of his unexpressed feelings for the opposite sex. I'm the kind of person that likes to be alone with everybody. Well, that's the way I've been in the past. Like, I'm happy just being in a room full of people with my books, having my music, just having my little bubble space and not being interrupted by anyone, just soaking up the conversations that happen all around me. I've kind of moved out of that a little bit. The way I am now is I make myself accessible to people. If I'd have had my headphones on when I was in the shopping centre, I wouldn't have been able to have a wonderful conversation with two ladies that were helping Voice of the Martyrs with their medical missions. I wouldn't have been able to be blessed by the experience of having fellowship with other Christians outside of my small circle of friends. That's one variable that you miss out on when you have online church, because you can't have that physical interaction with randoms and strangers, and that can be scary. When I was having that conversation about Voice of the Martyrs, I was scared that somebody was going to come up to us and somebody was going to call the police or somebody was going to try and make trouble for us, but I didn't have to give in to those fears. Sure, that could have happened, and they could have contacted security, and they could have pinned me to the ground, and they could have made trouble for me. I know what it's like to be pinned to the ground, so it's more scary if you haven't already experienced it. It isn't always easy to know how to deal with life when your whole way of living your life has changed. For the longest, meeting and greeting people has just been a part of the way we live our lives. And now, when we find ourselves coming back to normal, it can be funny coming out of our shell again. It can be interesting facing the world. I didn't have to give in to terror. I know God's perfect love casts out all fear. I didn't have to have these paranoid thoughts floating around inside my head. I do regret not passing on my contacts. It's always hard to know when you meet someone for the first time if you should establish a further connection with them or if you should just let them be. I didn't ask any questions. I just let them do all the question. I just let them do all the question asking, and I didn't talk about my own life as much as I just allowed them to talk about theirs. I'm not always like that. There are so many occasions where I've been the dominant one in the conversation that in times past when I've gone quiet on my friends, they wondered if something was wrong with me because they're so used to me controlling the conversation. But I know it's toxic to be the one who's constantly dominating conversations. I'm working on that self-absorbed, narcissistic way of approaching the world. I made a statement which I kind of regret because it didn't really add anything to the conversation. I was talking about some people who think that reading is a waste of time. I could see that Janice didn't take that well, because she's like me and she's somebody that loves reading. So if you diss reading, it's almost like you're stabbing her in the face. I was just thinking back on past experiences though, where I was having a coffee with a bus driver and he was poo-pooing the idea of reading because he was talking about people missing out on experiencing life because they've always got their nose in a book. But reading books is how I experience life. It opens up the world to me. During this time when we can't fly and we can't always travel interstate, and some of us can't go outside our houses except if we're key workers or essential workers, or if we're doing essential business like getting food or getting medicine or going to the doctors or going to a funeral. During this time, it's hard to fight the urge not to get absorbed into a fantasy world, not to get locked into a past mentality, into the mentality of always thinking about the past and being continually nostalgic. It's weird to see people always walking around with masks on. Some countries have made it mandatory. We don't need to be so obsessed with safety that we destroy our way of life. There is talk of a second wave of COVID. I pray that this sickness will be stopped in its tracks. God is in charge of the universe. We don't have to worry about COVID. All we have to concern ourselves with is whether we're in a right relationship with Jesus Christ. If we got that sorted, then we can have peace and joy in our hearts. Sure, there's people around the world that are hurting right now because they can't be with loved ones. They said that we could have 10 people meeting together with us for Mother's Day. But for some people, they can easily have 10 or 20 in their family, and several families come together, and some people have families that are overseas, so it's good, but it could be better. It's kind of shortchanging people. And all these COVID rules don't make the world any safer. They just make it more paranoid. And when people are paranoid, they have mental health issues. Two people got killed because they were arguing on the freeway and they got run over by a truck. I don't want the last words that come out of my mouth to be argumentative ones unless I'm arguing the case for believing in Jesus Christ in a way that's speaking the truth in love. My carer made a piece of art. He gathered together all these different photos of his kids on a board and wrote the text for Proverbs 31 on it. and gave it to his wife for Mother's Day. One lady was supposed to receive a cup from our church for Mother's Day. It was sent to the place she used to live, and the lady who lives at the place where she used to live thanked the church. She's not bitter about it. I'm wondering if you would be if you were in her shoes. Mum didn't want her cup. We've already got a cupboard full of cups. So, if anyone's ever thinking of sending us cups, please don't. We will receive them with love, but we definitely don't need them, and we'll just find new homes for them. So you're kind of wasting your time if you give them to us. I was a bit hypocritical today because I was challenging my dad on using words that aren't normal for him, because he's not from the region of the United Kingdom that he was imitating. But I did the same thing when I expressed myself through rhymes and through words. I just pick up on the influences of what I listen to. I don't try and force it. I don't try and force it all the time. Sometimes I do try and force it, but mostly I just let words flow naturally out of my mouth. It's funny because I hear people enunciating in different ways in different regions of the world. I love the fact that because of Jesus Christ, we've got family anywhere we go on earth. If you haven't copped my bud Susie's music, check it out. She's got one that basically means Phyllis in Swahili. She does reggae gospel. So you spell Susie Suzeeye. She calls herself the African Empress. Mike Harrow was impressed with her music. He loves the African sound. In a way, you could say it reminds him of his roots or the world that he's never known. He didn't grow up in a society where he was surrounded by people from his culture. So he's kind of been influenced more by other cultures like the Maori culture and the culture of people in Melbourne and the culture of people in New Zealand, more than by the Fijian culture. He's just starting to get the hunger inside him to learn Fijian. He used to live on Silver Street in Deception Bay, and he was telling himself that one day he's gonna live on Gold Street. He doesn't live on Gold Street, but he was speaking prophetically into his future, that God's gonna do better things with his life, and he's now reached a place where he's running his own business, and he's essentially living a dream. I was laughing with my mum because he was looking for somebody to do his cooking for him 5 times a week, and he was offering $20 an hour, 3 hours a day, for 5 days a week, for 7 days a week. Anyways, Mum would not be persuaded for all the tea in China. I tried to persuade her all night. I just kept on going on and on about it. And we were both just laughing our heads off. And it's interesting considering the future, and also it's interesting to see how much Mum and I are alike. In some ways, you could say Mum was scared because she was faced with the prospects of doing something new, and I get scared when I'm going somewhere I haven't been before, or I'm doing something that I haven't done before. I get angry when I'm asked to do things. Sometimes I'm having an outburst because I'm asked to do something, and I'm both angry because I'm asked to do it, and I'm scared because I'm sure that if I'm asked to do it, I'm gonna mess it up. I know that shows a lack of trust in God. It's true what Philippians 4:13 says, that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Often I don't have confidence in myself. I don't think I'm competent. There's so many others out there who have the same skills that I do, who have better honed their skills. Yet God continues to bless me, He continues to use me, despite my weakness. It's amazing how His strength manifests even in my weakness. It's incredible how He shows us love even when we hate Him, even when we deny He exists. His graciousness is mind-blowing. It's too easy to make up excuses for sin. It's too easy to get locked in a mentality where we focus on how good we are instead of focusing on how good God is. It's too easy for us to make gods out of people, or make gods out of ourselves, or to get addicted and to let our addictions become our gods or our slave masters. It's too easy to be addicted to fear. It's too easy to be addicted to controlling other people. It's too easy to be addicted to laziness. It's too easy to be addicted to making excuses for not seizing the day. I thought I'd completely messed up with my friend Dana, but God enabled us to still be friends. He helped me to eat humble pie and admit to my mistake in trying to run a life when we're not married, we're not engaged, we're not in the same country, so I have no right to speak into her life in that way. God helps me to change my nature, to reflect His nature. He helps me to be more like him and less like the world. He helps me to be positive instead of being negative. He helps me to know when to speak and when to refrain from speaking. I wanted her to change the way she was recording the song, but she didn't need to change the way she was recording the song. She just needed to be true to what God was calling her to do, which is exactly what she is being and what she is doing. And God's using her music to bring people who are following false religions into the one true religion, and their eyes are being opened to the truth. He's used her to deliver people from demons. He's used her to bring healing to people. She's vigilant. She'll stay up all night praying for someone to be released from bondage. She's obedient to the flow of the Holy Spirit. She just goes wherever the Holy Spirit tells her to go. She goes to churches that she's never been to before because God told her to go to those churches. She's radically obedient to God. She's completely surrendered to Christ. It's interesting how God told her through a pastor that her guitar would be like Moses' rod, and yesterday, my Carol was saying that this stick that I picked up reminded him of Moses. It was interesting how Moses' rod turned into a snake and how the Egyptians' rods turned into snakes, but Moses' snake ate up all the other snakes. That shows that God is omnipotent. He is all-powerful. Any power the enemy has is only given to the enemy by God. He may try and convince us that he's more powerful than God, but God has 2/3 of the angels on his team. So there's no way he could ever come close to being as powerful as God. The Israelites were told that if they disobeyed God, they would be sold into slavery and they would be cannibals. Mothers would eat their own babies, and they would hide their babies from their husbands, not because they wanted to protect them and preserve them, which is what a mother should do, but because they wanted to stop their husbands from eating them, because they wanted to eat them themselves. Israel has been under siege before. God knew that Israel was going to turn their back on God, but he still chose to love them. He still chose to work with them. He never stopped them from being his chosen people. He never stops loving us. He never stops revealing himself to us. He's exceedingly patient. He's more patient than we can ever imagine being. We are far too hot-tempered as humans. We fly off the handle too easily. We make maidens out of molehills. We let little things get the best of us. We allow ourselves to be stressed out for no good reason. My carer had never heard of NF before. I told him that I like NF, but he should be a better representative of Christ. I didn't really explain what I meant by that. NF talks about people doing drugs, but he doesn't talk about how Christians shouldn't do drugs or what drugs do to people, how they kill people's brain cells, how they cause us to worship the devil, how they wreck people's lives, how they cause people to get involved in crime, how they stop people from having a good life because they're locked away in jail, which gives them a criminal record and affects their ability to get jobs. Lecrae did a better job than NF in talking about drugs when he talked about two sides of the game, because he talks about how drugs wreck people's lives. He doesn't talk about how they destroy brain cells, but that's something that he's wrestled with in the past. I don't know if I'm sure he's given himself brain damage, but he still raps like a monster. This totally isn't a diss against Lecrae, but it's just that anyone that takes drugs affects their brains. I'm not the way I am because of drugs as far as I know, although I very well could be because I had the MMR vaccine, measles, mumps and rubella vaccine, but there's no proof that that is what gives people autism, and it doesn't give people Tourette's syndrome. This is something that God allowed me to have. What cuts me the deepest is that NF talks about not forgiving his mother, and he just ends the song like that. And I think as a Christian, he should have done better. He should have talked about how we should forgive, even if he didn't feel like forgiving. Even though it would be intellectually dishonest to say that he forgave his mother when he didn't forgive his mother. I'm not saying that he should say that he forgave his mother when he didn't forgive his mother, because that wouldn't be honest. But he should have said that he should have forgiven his mother, because forgiveness keeps people its prisoner. It keeps people its slave. It causes people's lives to be shortened because it fills them with bitterness. It consumes them like a fire. It eats away at their insides. Unforgiveness destroys people's lives. We should represent love instead of hatred. We should turn our backs on any vendettas we have going inside of our heads. It's just the same in God's eyes if we think about killing someone as if we killed them in real life. All of us are guilty of killing Christ on the cross. We are responsible for his blood because it was the Jews that said, "Let his blood be on our heads and on the heads of our children," but if any of us had been in a situation, we probably would have done the same thing, because Christ had to die for the sake of the redemption of mankind, because Adam and Eve sinned, so we made it necessary for him to die. That's why we're responsible for his death. That's why we're guilty of his death. But he sets us free from our debt. He sets us free from our debt. He sets us free from our guilt. He sets us free from our filthiness. He changes our nature into his nature. He redeems us and he restores us. He heals us. He purifies us. He makes us a reflection of his world-transforming power. He's available any hour. He never has a busy tone when we talk to him. We can't call him on the phone, but we can communicate with him. He hears the cry of our hearts. Our cries never fall on deaf ears. He's always with us. He never leaves us or forsakes us. He's ever faithful. He's the friend who sticks closer than a brother. He gets rid of all enmity. He brings down anything that attempts to exalt itself above him. Let's not be those who attempt to exalt ourselves above him. Let us recognize our position of humility below him. He is the one who enables us to overthrow the world and all of its influence.